Everyone seems to be or has drafted the wrong players in their fantasy draft, and you can't afford to be making these mistakes this early in the season. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you 4 players that shouldn't be on your team anymore, and a replacement player that I feel like will be much better long-term at a much lower roster percentage to help you win your leagues. This is going to be a good video, guys, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Listen, I get it. Brent Burns is a very safe defenseman pick. He hasn't missed a game since 2014 and has actually been extremely productive over that time. The issue, Burns was 28 years old in 2014, and we're now entering his age 39 season, and I have some concerns. With the signing of Shane Gostisbehere, a noted power play specialist to the Carolina Hurricanes, who is going to be running the top power play unit in Carolina, this is going to have a significant impact on Burns' production this season. Not only did Burns' points decrease by 18 last season, but his shot rate also decreased by 70 total shots, and he failed to produce 100 hits and 50 blocks. The 20 power play points that Burns had last season will surely see a significant decline going into this year, meaning Burns' overall fantasy value is not good. But luckily, there's a player that's 50% rostered that has the chance to outproduce Burns significantly, and this player is Justin Falk. Now, hear me out here a little bit. Torrey Krug is out for the entire season, and this is Falk's time to shine in St. Louis, just like he did two years ago. And Falk has been a strong offensive defenseman in his career, and even though most of his value does come from his elite peripherals, Falk has scored 10 plus goals in 6 seasons and 15 plus goals in 4 of those seasons, and he's just 1 year removed from an 11 goal, 50 point season, and 80% of those points came at 5-on-5. Now, with the improvement in his minutes this season, with Torrey Krug now out, Falk looks to have a great opportunity to be a 50-point, 20 power play point player with triple 300s in his shots, hits, and blocks. It's really hard to get away from Falk this season, and I'm pretty much touting him just like I did with Michael Matheson last year, where I was telling you pretty much each and every week and in the preseason that you need to be adding Michael Matheson because he is in a clear spot to dominate this season. And with Justin Falk at just 41% rostered, you can either draft or add a guy that's going to be quarterbacking the top power play unit in St. Louis, while also adding some of the league's strongest peripherals amongst defensemen. I love Falk right now. I cannot believe his roster percentage is under 50%. I think I've drafted him in about 5 of my 6 teams so far going into the season, and it's really hard for me to get away from a guy that's falling significantly in drafts, under 50% roster percentage, that's going to be on the top power play unit, that has proven to be a strong offensive-minded defenseman in his career, and adds very good peripherals. I wouldn't be surprised to see his roster percentage go up to 70+% within the first 2 weeks of fantasy hockey. So this is a perfect time to get rid of Brent Burns and bring in Justin Falk, or look to trade away one of those guys and trade for Justin Falk. It's going to be a really promising season for Falk, bearing injury, but if he can stay healthy, the opportunity is there, the minutes are there, and the peripheral coverage will help sustain his strong floor. I love Falk this season, and this is a guy you need to go out and try to get. Mark Stone honestly is one of the league's biggest memes, and there's really no reason why his roster percentage should be at 70% right now, unless you play in a league that's strictly goals and assists, and your league ends at the NHL trade deadline. I hope you get that joke. But Stone was near a point per game over the last 3 seasons, and the funny part, he actually has less shots over those last 3 seasons than Cole Caulfield did in the entire 2023 season. And Mark Stone honestly is one of the worst peripheral forwards in the league, where he finished with the 336th best shot rate in the NHL last season. Now, don't get me wrong, his point production, it's pretty legit. He's been close to a point per game player, but he should be about this season around or just below a point per game. But the last time Stone played a full 82 games, take a guess. Never. And the last time over 70, 2018. Well, we all know what's going to happen, and no, I'm not a salty Western Conference fan, but we can all just safely assume that come February, Mark Stone's going to have a magical injury and be on the LTIR until playoffs start. And if he goes in the LTIR in February, what does this mean for your fantasy team? You don't have him for the fantasy playoffs. And who do you want for your fantasy playoffs? None other than Dylan Gunther of the Utah Hockey Club. Man, I can't wait for this team name to be changed. And I still have all the Arizona stuff up there because we don't really have any Utah pictures right now. But this team is really exciting, and Dylan Gunther continues to impress. And throughout the preseason so far, he's played in just 2 games, so I get it, small sample size. He's played in over 17 minutes and 2 goals, 3 points, 9 shots. So he's pretty much picking up exactly where he left off last season, and that's the biggest thing for me. So last year in 45 games, he was called up mid-season, 18 goals, 35 points, 121 shots, while playing over 16 minutes per night. That's a 9.9 shots per 60 rate, ranking him 65th in the NHL, and he was called up mid-season. So his goal rate last season, 39th in the NHL. So really, really promising numbers from a young player on a Utah club that should be extremely exciting this season. With the addition of Mikhail Sergachev, they add a legitimate #1 defenseman that should significantly help out their power play, which was actually about mid-ranking last season. I think they were the 16th best power play in the league. So now with an older core, with the addition of Mikhail Sergachev, who has proved it before on the top power play unit in Tampa 2 seasons ago, with Dylan Gunther, there's a lot of really good opportunity right now. He's projected to currently skate on line 2 and power play 1, the upside to play well over 17 minutes per night, and in a highly offensive role on this Utah team, like I mentioned, that should be much, much better this season. At just 39% rostered, I would much prefer Dylan Gunther, especially over the long term over Mark Stone. He's projected to outperform the shots on goal by over 80 shots, and the point production is about the same as Mark Stone. So this season, we love Gunther. We think he's a great add in the early going, with the upside to finish as a potential top 100 player. There's no reason for you to be adding Mark Stone. There's no reason for you to be drafting Mark Stone. If he's on your roster, I'm 100% fine with you dropping him and adding Gunther, who's in a much better position to succeed this season, especially if you drafted Stone late in drafts and you didn't get Gunther, but he's still available on your free agency. Add up Gunther, the upside's there, the opportunity is going to be there for him. And again, with Mark Stone, there's a lot of concern that come February, he will not be playing in the NHL until the playoffs starts back up. And I know, again, I sound like a salty Western Conference fan, but I'm definitely not. I just think the upside with Gunther is sky high compared to Mark Stone. We know we're going to get out of Stone, and we don't know we're going to get out of Gunther, but what the telltale sign is for Gunther here is how good his second half was last season. He was a very high pick, and he's in a great opportunity to succeed this season. I definitely think this is a guy that's going to be well over 70% rostered within the first month of hockey, contingent on how well he does, and again, bearing injury. But there's a lot to like from the season, and a guy you need to be getting on your rosters. Filip Hronek was kind of a tale of 2 seasons last year. So he was traded over to Vancouver, and if we have any Wings or Vancouver's fans, I'm sure you were really surprised with seeing him get moved from either your team if you're a Wings fan, or added to your team if you're a Vancouver fan. Now, he was really good to start the season last year, and we saw his roster percentage go from pretty much 0 all the way up to about 80% very early because of how strong of a start he did have. Through the first 24 games of the season, Hronek ranked 4th amongst defensemen in points and 3rd amongst defensemen in time on ice. Now, keep in mind, he wasn't actually playing any power play time other than power play 2, but we know in the Vancouver Canucks, they love to roll their top power play unit, and people hung on to Hronek a lot longer than they should have. So over those first 24 games, he had 23 points, and he ranked 4th amongst defensemen in points. Now, over the next 57 games, Hronek scored just 3 goals, added 22 assists, while posting less than 2 shots per game, less than 2 hits per game, and just over a block per game. His minutes scaled back significantly, down from 25 minutes to start the season to just over 22 minutes per night. And fantasy managers, if you dropped him, you likely benefited, but those who held on, sadly, were disappointed for a long period of time. Now, we know with Quinn Hughes, he's the staple #1 defenseman in Vancouver. There's really no reason for him to get moved up the top power play unit. He's one of the best puck moving, if not one of the best power play defensemen in the entire NHL. And his peripherals for Hronek are okay, but not overly impressive, and the lack of power play time kind of scares me going into the season. But luckily, you can move on from Hronek and draft or add Mr. Cam York, someone I've been touting quite a bit in the preseason, and York broke out in the second half of 2023, finally earning the trust from John Tortorella, which we all know is not easy to do. He moved into a top pair role and power play 1 role. Over the last 22 games of the season last year, York ranked 4th amongst defensemen in average time on ice with 25 minutes and 5 seconds of time, while adding 9 points, 49 shots, 25 hits, and 61 blocks. Now, the point totals may have lacked last season, but the peripheral upside is massive. With this final 22 games, his 82 game pace was 180 shots, 100 hits, and 227 blocks. So not only is he one of the highest upside blocking defensemen in the league, but now he has the opportunity to skate pair one, power play one for a majority of the season. And I get it. That power play on Philadelphia last season was not good. One of the worst in the NHL, but hopefully with Michkov now there, shining in preseason right now, he can hopefully significantly help this Flyers power play to help improve the league's worst power play last season to hopefully maybe a mid-range or a little bit below mid-range power play. But anything from last season is a significant improvement, and Cam York is only going to be a benefactor who should be eating massive minutes as a pair one, power play one defenseman. And this season, we have him projected for 41 points, 11 points on the power play, 148 shots, 76 hits, and 155 blocks. Honestly, I can see this scaling up quite a bit in the early going, contingent on how well he does. But early looks in Cam does have him as pair one, power play one guy. And there's a lot to like from a guy who's under 30% rostered right now at just 22%, meaning he's likely going to be available in your leagues. For me, I would be moving on from Filip Hronek, who has mediocre peripherals, no power play time, and grabbing a guy with Cam York that has solid base in his peripherals, but then also adds great power play time on a Philadelphia Flyers team that hopefully should be better offensively this season. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Elias Samsonov's actually a solid goaltender, but he's not a starting goaltender. And he's on a new Vegas team this year that seems to be the clear backup behind Adin Hill, who will likely see about a 60% start share, meaning Samsonov's in line for about 40% of the starts. Now, I can't see Samsonov taking over the net, especially early. He's never really proven to be a starting goalie in his career, and his highest number of starts in a season is 40, which he eclipsed in each of the last 3 seasons, but nothing higher than 40. Now, he was, again, a tale of 2 seasons, where in the first half of the year, Samsonov had a 394 goals against average, an 862 save percentage, and seemingly lost the net in Toronto to Joseph Woll. But in the second half, Samsonov actually did pick it up quite a bit, ending the last 40 games of the season with a 905 save percentage and a 269 goals against average. If you drafted him, you basically had a goalie who played half the season, finished with an 890 save percentage, and finished with a 313 goals against average. Basically unplayable in fantasy. Now, Adin Hill, and you're probably already thinking this, or you've already commented on the video, he does have some injury history in his career, and even himself has failed to eclipse the 40 start mark, with 35 being the highest amount of starts in a season for him as early as last season. But fortunately for Hill, he's managed to have a 260 goals against average and a 912 save percentage since joining Vegas, and this tells me it's basically his net to lose. Samsonov seems like a really big risk for me given the volatility in net, and I just think there are a lot better options at a lower roster percentage than him, which is a goalie like Tristan Jarry of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, I don't think the Penguins will be that competitive this season. We need to see a lot from Sidney Crosby like we saw in the latter half of last season, and hopefully we see Erik Karlsson return back to his San Jose form and be that elite offensive defenseman that we were hoping for when he moved over to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, with Tristan Jarry, there's really no competition on the back end, and with Nedeljkovic now injured, he's currently week to week. Jarry actually should see quite a bit of start share this season, and we're assuming about a 50% projected start share. And Jarry last season, if you owned him or you drafted him, he likely wasn't the goalie you were hoping for. You may have dropped him or got rid of him or were just overall frustrated with him. But he actually had a better season than people give him credit for. He finished 2023 with a 905 save percentage, a 291 goals against average, and 6 shutouts, where he actually led the league in shutouts over 48 starts. And for qualified goalies over the last 3 seasons, if we want to look at a historical view for Jarry, he ranks 13th for starts, 22nd for save percentage, and 23rd for goals against average. Very respectable for a goaltender who basically went undrafted this season or very, very late in your drafts. Now, since rolling over to a starting role back in 2019, Jarry has never finished with a save percentage below 900 and a goals against average above 3, meaning he's a very stable, sustainable goalie who should see quite a bit of volume this season. I think we're confident projecting for about a 70% start share, and especially with Nedeljkovic hurt in the early going, the volume will be there. He just needs to find his form that he's had previously in his career. But if he can finish with a 905 save percentage and a 275 goals against average, this will probably put him in top 15 goalie rankings, especially with the volume that he should get in the early going. Now, at just 48% rostered, you still have time to be adding Jarry to your roster. You still have opportunity to trade for Jarry to your roster. and he should be a high priority in the early going as managers are looking to get trades away, looking to move some of the players they're upset in drafting. And Jarry seems to pretty much have no capital right now, meaning you can grab him for pretty much nothing or just add him on your free agency at just under 50% rostered. Again, I assume we're going to see this roster percentage move up quite a bit as the season begins to progress. We're still projecting him for 57 stars this year, a losing record because we don't think the Penguins are going to be that competitive of a team, but a 906 save percentage and a 271 goals against average with 1,500 saves are very, very good numbers for Jarry at under 50% rostered. Definitely a guy I would want to be rostering over Elias Samsonov. That will do it for the video where I talk about players that you may have drafted that I think you should get rid of and add or trade for other players. Hopefully you enjoyed this style of video. It's a little bit new to our channel, and if you did, make sure you leave a like, leave a comment below on what you think, and if you have any other hot takes that you think players that you should be dropping and adding, and let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, guys, make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.